What if everything you've been told about finding purpose in life is completely wrong? What if Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who revolutionized psychology and wrote the book that's helped over 10 million people find meaning in life, discovered a shocking truth about suffering that could change your life forever? In the next 10 minutes, I'm going to reveal the 3 psychological breakthroughs that Frankl learned from surviving 4 concentration camps and treating thousands of patients, discoveries that most therapists today completely miss. But first, I need you to do something. Comment below if you've ever felt like your suffering was meaningless, because what you're about to learn challenges everything modern psychology teaches about pain, purpose, and transformation. Here are the 3 Frankl discoveries that will blow your mind. Look, I know what you're thinking. Another self-help guru promising to solve all your problems. But this isn't about positive thinking or fake motivation. This is about a man who survived Theresienstadt, Auschwitz, Kaufering, and Turkheim concentration camps, and discovered something that shocked even Harvard professors when he lectured there decades later. Viktor Frankl wasn't just another prisoner. He was a trained psychiatrist who turned the worst human experience imaginable into a laboratory for understanding the human mind. And what he found there, well, it changed psychology forever. But wait, before I reveal what Frankl discovered about suffering, let me tell you about the moment everything changed for him. Picture this. It's 1944 and Frankl is standing in a freezing concentration camp, watching fellow prisoners die around him. His wife, his parents, his brother, all murdered by the Nazis. He had every reason to give up, every reason to let despair consume him like it consumed so many others. But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of breaking down, Frankl started observing. He noticed something that would revolutionize how we understand human psychology. Some prisoners, despite facing identical horrors, found ways to maintain their humanity, while others completely collapsed. The difference wasn't physical strength, education, or social status. It was something much deeper. Hold on, because what I'm about to show you will blow your mind. Frankl discovered that the prisoners who survived weren't necessarily the strongest or smartest. They were the ones who found meaning in their suffering. Not happiness, not comfort, not even hope in the traditional sense. Meaning. Now listen, this is where most people get it wrong. They think meaning comes from avoiding pain or achieving pleasure. But Frankl proved the opposite. He wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. This wasn't just philosophy for him. This was survival science. But before we continue, let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed that your biggest breakthroughs came not from your easiest moments, but from your most difficult ones? Comment below and tell me about a time when struggle actually made you stronger. Because Frankl's first major discovery explains exactly why this happens. Here's what Frankl observed in the camps that most psychologists missed. The human mind doesn't just seek pleasure and avoid pain like Freud claimed. It doesn't just seek power like Adler suggested. Above all else, the human mind seeks meaning. Even in the midst of unimaginable suffering, people can find reasons to continue living if they discover meaning in their experience. This changes everything about how we approach our own struggles. See, in his post-war clinical practice, Frankl treated thousands of patients using this principle. He called it logotherapy, from the Greek word logos, meaning purpose or meaning, and the results were extraordinary. Let me tell you about one case that perfectly illustrates this. Frankl treated a man who had been severely depressed for years after losing his wife. Traditional therapy had failed. Medications weren't working. The man was on the verge of suicide. But instead of focusing on the man's pain, Frankl asked him a simple question. What would your wife want for you right now? The transformation was immediate. The man realized his wife would want him to live, to honor her memory by continuing to love and serve others. His depression didn't disappear overnight, but he found a reason to keep going. He found meaning in his suffering that gave him the strength to rebuild his life. But wait, there's more. Frankl's second breakthrough is even more powerful. In the Auschwitz concentration camps, he discovered what he called the last of human freedoms. Even when everything external is stripped away, even when you have no control over your circumstances, you still have one thing that no one can take from you: your freedom to choose your response. This isn't just motivational speaking. This is scientifically documented observation from the worst conditions humans have ever faced. Frankl wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Now here's where this gets practical for your life. Think about your current struggles. Maybe you're dealing with a difficult relationship, financial stress, health problems, or career setbacks. Traditional psychology tells you to eliminate these problems to be happy. But Frankl discovered something revolutionary. You don't need to eliminate suffering to find fulfillment. You need to find meaning in your suffering. This technique I'm about to reveal in the next few minutes has transformed millions of lives around the world. Frankl used it not just with Holocaust survivors, but with everyday people dealing with depression, anxiety, addiction, and existential emptiness. It's based on what he observed about the prisoners who not only survived, but maintained their dignity and humanity in the camps. But before I show you this life-changing technique, let me ask you something that will determine whether this works for you or not. Are you ready to stop being a victim of your circumstances and start taking responsibility for your response to them? Because what comes next requires courage. Here's Frankl's third and most powerful discovery. The people who thrived despite suffering weren't focused on their past trauma or their current pain. They were focused on their future responsibility. They had something or someone they needed to live for, a task that only they could complete, a purpose that gave meaning to their existence. Frankl himself survived because he had a manuscript, hidden in his coat, psychological theories he needed to share with the world. When the Nazis took that manuscript away, he didn't give up. He reconstructed it mentally, adding new insights from his camp experiences. His future work became his reason to survive each day. In his clinical practice after the war, Frankl helped patients identify what he called their unique meaning. Not generic purpose, but the specific meaning that only they could fulfill. One patient was a surgeon who had lost his confidence after a failed operation. Instead of focusing on the failure, Frankl helped him see that his experience with failure made him uniquely qualified to help other surgeons avoid similar mistakes. Another patient was a mother who had lost a child and felt her life was over. Frankl helped her realize that her deep understanding of grief positioned her to help other grieving parents in ways that no one else could. Her suffering became the foundation for her service. This is the pattern Frankl discovered. Suffering becomes meaningful when it serves something greater than itself. Not when we avoid it, not when we deny it, but when we transform it into service, wisdom, or love. But here's what most people don't understand about this process. Finding meaning in suffering isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily choice, sometimes a moment-by-moment choice. Frankl called this self-transcendence, the ability to focus on something beyond your immediate circumstances. Let me break this down step by step using Frankl's exact methodology. First, you identify your current suffering. Don't minimize it. Don't spiritualize it away. Just acknowledge it honestly. Second, you ask yourself, what is this experience teaching me that I couldn't learn any other way? Third, you identify who needs what you're learning. Who could benefit from your experience, your insights, your hard-won wisdom? This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything happens for a reason. This is about taking responsibility for what Frankl called the meaning of the moment. Even in the darkest situations, there's always some small way to choose love over hate, service over selfishness, growth over stagnation. Now listen carefully, because this next part will change how you see everything. Frankl discovered that the prisoners who survived weren't necessarily more optimistic. They weren't in denial about their situation. They were what he called tragic optimists. They faced reality honestly, but chose to act as if their actions mattered. Think about this practically. Your current struggle, whatever it is teaching you something valuable. Your ability to care about others even in pain shows your humanity hasn't been destroyed. Your daily efforts, however small, prove you haven't given up. Where these three intersect, meaning emerges. But wait, there's a fourth element that Frankl discovered later in his career, something that made his approach even more powerful. He called it the will to meaning beyond the self. The prisoners who survived best weren't just finding personal meaning. They were contributing to meaning for others. In one of his most powerful case studies, Frankl worked with a Holocaust survivor who couldn't find any reason to live. Everything had been taken from him: family, home, health, hope. But then, Frankl asked him to consider writing down his experiences, not for therapy, but so that future generations could learn from them. The man initially resisted. Who would want to read about such horror? But Frankl helped him see that his story wasn't just about horror. It was about the indestructibility of human dignity, the power of choice even in impossible circumstances, the triumph of meaning over meaninglessness. That man's memoir became one of the most important Holocaust testimonies ever written, helping thousands of people find courage in their own struggles. His personal pain became universal purpose. His individual suffering transformed into collective wisdom. This pattern appears throughout Frankl's work. The most profound healing happens when people transform their personal pain into service for others. Not by forgetting their struggles, but by using them as the foundation for contribution. Here's what this means for you right now. Whatever you're going through, someone else is going through something similar and could benefit from your experience. Your struggle isn't just about you. It's preparing you to help others who will face similar challenges. This isn't about becoming a professional helper or therapist. It's about recognizing that your lived experience has value, that your hard-won insights matter, that your journey through difficulty qualifies you to guide others on similar paths. Frankl proved this principle in his international lectures. When he spoke at Harvard, Stanford, and dozens of other prestigious universities, he wasn't sharing abstract theories. He was sharing lived wisdom, insights earned through the most extreme human experiences possible. The academics were amazed, not just by his ideas, but by the undeniable authority that came from having lived what he taught. His suffering had become his credentials, his pain had become his platform, his wounds had become his wisdom. Now here's the final element that makes this approach truly transformative, something Frankl discovered through decades of post-war clinical work. The people who found the deepest meaning in their suffering weren't those who suffered the most. They were those who chose to suffer consciously, deliberately, for something greater than themselves. This sounds paradoxical, but Frankl observed it repeatedly. When people voluntarily embrace difficulty for a meaningful purpose, the suffering becomes not just bearable, but transformative. Think of parents sacrificing for their children, activists enduring hardship for justice, entrepreneurs persisting through failure for their vision. The suffering that destroys us is meaningless suffering. The suffering that transforms us is chosen suffering. Suffering we accept because it serves something we value more than our comfort. Viktor Frankl survived the worst that humans can do to each other and discovered that even in hell meaning is possible. He proved that our response to suffering matters more than the suffering itself. He showed that purpose is more powerful than pain, that meaning can transform any experience, no matter how difficult. But more than that, he showed us that we don't have to wait for perfect circumstances to live meaningful lives. We don't have to solve all our problems before we can contribute to the world. We can find meaning right now in the midst of our struggles by choosing to respond in ways that serve something greater than ourselves. The question isn't whether you'll face suffering. The question is what you'll make it mean. The question isn't whether life will challenge you. The question is how you'll use those challenges to serve something greater than yourself. Comment below and tell me, what struggle in your life could become meaningful if you saw it as preparation for service? What pain could you transform into purpose? What wound could become your greatest wisdom? And most importantly, who in your life right now could benefit from the lessons you're learning through your current difficulties? Because that's where transformation begins. Not with the elimination of suffering, but with the discovery of meaning within it. Not with perfect circumstances, but with purposeful responses to imperfect circumstances, not with avoiding life's difficulties, but with embracing them as opportunities for growth, service, and meaning. Viktor Frankl gave us the roadmap. He showed us that meaning is always possible, that dignity can be maintained in any circumstance, that our response to life matters more than what life does to us. Now it's up to you to walk the path, to find your unique meaning, to transform your struggles into service, your pain into purpose, your wounds into wisdom. The world needs what you're learning. The world needs who you're becoming. The world needs the meaning you're creating from your struggles. Don't waste your pain. Transform it. Don't hide your scars. Let them become the source of your strength and service to others. This concept of tragic optimism became central to Frankl's logotherapy. It means saying yes to life despite suffering, despite guilt, despite death. It means finding meaning not in spite of life's difficulties, but because of them. It means recognizing that some of life's greatest contributions come from those who have suffered most deeply. Think about the people who have influenced your life most profoundly. Chances are they weren't the ones who had it easy. They were the ones who faced significant challenges and found ways to transform their pain into purpose, their wounds into wisdom, their suffering into service. Before we get to the most important part, let me tell you about the study that shocked even Frankl's Harvard colleagues. After the war, researchers tracked Holocaust survivors to see who thrived and who struggled. The surprising finding? It wasn't the survivors who forgot their experiences who did best. It was those who found ways to give meaning to their suffering. Through teaching, writing, helping other survivors, or working to prevent future genocides. This research confirmed what Frankl had observed. Meaning-making is more powerful than trauma. When people find purpose in their pain, they don't just survive, they thrive. They become what Frankl called wounded healers, people whose deepest struggles become their greatest strengths. Here's the technique that has transformed thousands of lives, the method Frankl developed from his camp observations and refined through decades of clinical practice. He called it dereflection. Instead of constantly focusing on your problems, you redirect your attention to your contributions. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "What is this preparing me to do?" When Frankl worked with depressed patients, he didn't just help them feel better. He helped them find reasons to feel better. He helped them identify the unique contribution that only they could make to the world. Depression often lifts naturally when people discover they have something meaningful to live for. For anxious patients, he showed them how their sensitivity could become empathy, how their worry could become care for others. For addicted patients, he helped them see that their experience with the dark side of life positioned them to guide others away from similar destruction. This knowledge is usually only available to trained logotherapists, but I'm sharing it with you because Frankl believed these insights belong to humanity, not just to professionals. He spent his life lecturing at universities around the world, writing 39 books, because he knew these discoveries could help millions of people find meaning in their struggles. The next part will change how you see every difficulty you've ever faced. Frankl discovered that suffering has three potential sources of meaning. First, it can teach you something valuable about life, about yourself, about what really matters. Second, it can prepare you to help others who face similar challenges. Third, it can develop qualities in you that can't be developed any other way: resilience, compassion, wisdom, strength. But here's the crucial point that most people miss. Meaning isn't something you find lying around waiting to be discovered. Meaning is something you create through your response to your circumstances. Frankl wrote, "Life is never made unbearable by circumstances, but only by lack of meaning and purpose." This puts enormous power back in your hands. You might not be able to control what happens to you, but you can always control what you make it mean. You can always choose to respond in ways that create meaning, that serve something greater than your immediate comfort or convenience. Let me give you a practical example from Frankl's post-war practice. He worked with a businessman who had lost everything in a financial crash. The man was suicidal, convinced his life was over. But Frankl helped him see that his experience with failure made him uniquely qualified to counsel other business leaders facing similar crises. The man started a support group for executives dealing with financial setbacks. His deepest failure became his greatest contribution. He found meaning not by avoiding his pain, but by using it to help others avoid similar destruction. This is the pattern Frankl observed again and again. Our greatest contributions often come from our deepest wounds. Our most powerful service emerges from our most difficult experiences. Our strongest wisdom grows from our darkest moments. But wait, there's one more element that makes this approach truly transformative. Frankl discovered that meaning isn't just individual, it's relational. The prisoners who survived best weren't just focused on their own survival, they were focused on helping others survive. They shared food, told jokes, offered encouragement, maintained hope for the group. In his clinical work, Frankl found the same pattern. Patients healed faster when they focused on how they could help other patients. Depression lifted when people found ways to serve. Anxiety decreased when people shifted attention from their own worries to others' needs. This challenges everything our culture teaches about self-care and personal happiness. Frankl proved that the path to fulfillment isn't through focusing on yourself, but through transcending yourself. Not through avoiding suffering, but through finding meaning in it. Not through pursuing happiness directly, but through pursuing purpose and letting happiness emerge naturally. If you're serious about transformation, here's what you need to understand. Meaning isn't a luxury for people who have their lives together. Meaning is the foundation that helps you get your life together. It's not something you pursue after you solve your problems. It's what gives you the strength to face your problems constructively. Frankl's approach has helped millions because it doesn't require perfect circumstances. It doesn't require eliminating all your struggles. It only requires that you choose to respond to your struggles in ways that create meaning, that serve something greater than your immediate comfort. The prisoners who survived the camps didn't have easier circumstances than those who perished. They had the same hunger, the same cold, the same brutality, but they found ways to maintain their humanity, to help others, to prepare for a future where they could share what they had learned. This is your choice right now. You can continue to see your struggles as meaningless obstacles to happiness, or you can begin to see them as meaningful preparation for service. You can focus on what life has taken from you, or you can focus on what life is asking of you. But here's something incredible that happened after Frankl returned from the camps. He could have spent his life bitter, angry, seeking revenge. Instead, he chose something that shocked everyone who knew his story. He forgave his captors, not because they deserved it, but because carrying hatred would have destroyed the meaning he had found in his suffering. This wasn't weakness. This was the ultimate expression of what he called the defiant power of the human spirit. Frankl understood that resentment is just another prison, and he had already been freed from one. He wasn't going to voluntarily enter another. In his clinical practice, this became one of his most powerful therapeutic tools. When patients came to him consumed by anger, bitterness, or the desire for revenge, he would show them how these emotions were actually preventing them from finding meaning. He would say, "Your anger is understandable, but is it useful? Your bitterness is justified, but is it helping you grow?" Let me tell you about a case that perfectly illustrates this principle. Frankl treated a woman whose child had been killed by a drunk driver. She had every right to be angry, every justification for bitterness, but her rage was consuming her life, destroying her marriage, alienating her other children. Traditional therapy focused on validating her anger, but Frankl asked her a different question. What would your child want you to do with this pain? The woman realized her child would want her to live, to love, to help prevent other families from experiencing similar tragedy. She started speaking at schools about drunk driving, lobbying for stricter laws, supporting other grieving parents. Her unbearable pain became her unstoppable purpose. This is what Frankl called tragic optimism in action. Not denying the tragedy, not minimizing the pain, but choosing to respond in ways that create meaning from meaninglessness, hope from despair, service from suffering. Now here's where most people get stuck, and Frankl had a specific technique for this. When patients would say, "But I don't know what my purpose is," he wouldn't try to help them find it. Instead, he would help them create it. He understood that meaning isn't discovered like buried treasure. Meaning is constructed like a building, brick by brick, choice by choice, response by response. Frankl developed what he called the meaning triangle. At one corner is suffering, at another is love, and at the third is work. He discovered that meaning emerges when these three elements intersect. Your suffering teaches you what matters. Your capacity for love shows you who matters. Your work demonstrates how you matter,